For my research, I chose to focus on vocabulary development in second language learners. My research question was, how can daily exposure to media help vocabulary development in second language learners? I am a Spanish teacher, and vocabulary development is crucial. I did the study with my international baccalaureate students. They are all seniors except for one, so I have a class of 13 seniors and a junior that all come from different backgrounds. Their levels of proficiency in Spanish are varied. I have students that have spoken Spanish all their lives and others that are only in their 4th year of learning the language. Krashen's theories on second language acquisition are what really guided me when doing my research. What I focused most on was the comprehensible input hypothesis. He talks about giving students information that is slightly beyond their present level of understanding. I was hoping that the media that I was exposing my students to would be the extra input that they would be able to understand. So what did I do? I decided to use different videos from the Univision website, considering they were all free and easily accessible. I chose different types of videos. I chose a sitcom, a soap opera, and morning shows, and a newscast. They watched different episodes of all of them. Students were asked to focus on vocabulary. I made my students aware of my project and of my research question. I made sure to ask them for their permission to be able to give them all the extra work. The students knew that when watching the videos, they needed to take notes and focus on new words that they were learning. They watched a different video every day for 2 weeks. They took notes and then reflected on the video afterwards. At the end of the 2 weeks, students filled out a questionnaire and were interviewed. After all the interviews and questionnaires and reflections, I found a variety of different results. My main focus was vocabulary. So let's see what the students thought.
I watched the videos. In terms of vocabulary, I learned vocabulary that pertained to the theme. And when we watched the sitcoms, one was titled Vecinos, I learned the word basura because the whole episode was about trash. And in the beginning, they had people living in apartments trying to get rid of their trash, so they had trash in their hand. And the word basura was just repeated throughout the whole episode.
While I was watching the videos, I learned new vocabulary in circumstances the characters were in. But most of the meaning, I didn't know exactly what the word meant, but by the situation, I was able to understand the context that they were put in and how they were being used.
Okay, so through the videos, mostly the narratives, it was much easier for me to pick up new vocab words, but it wasn't that I necessarily knew what they really meant by themselves, like definitional, but when they were used in a context of one of the actors saying it all together, like in a conversation, I was able to understand basically what it meant just within the context of their
sentences. In terms of
speaking.
vocabulary, I realized that I wasn't able to understand everything that they were saying, but I was able to understand most of a sentence, and I would just miss one word. Even though that word was important, I'd usually be able to find out what the rest of the sentence was about, and I would actually be able to use that to find out what the word meant that I didn't know.
A lot of new vocabulary words, mostly through the narratives because of the plot line, and through the context clues I was able to figure out what was going on a lot easier than through the news and morning shows. I think they talked really fast in those too, so it was a lot harder for me to catch what was going on. But with the narratives, it was a lot easier for me to follow and learn new vocabulary words. However, even though I did learn a lot of new words, I wasn't able to retain any of them, so I didn't really remember any of them after I had watched the videos. But when I was watching them, I was able to catch a lot of them.
Another finding was that the type of video mattered. I had chosen different types of videos so that the students would not be bored with the same thing over and over. What ended up happening was that the type of video affected their level of comprehension.
We watched the news, Spanish news videos. it was so much harder to understand what they were saying because they were speaking very, very fast. But a positive part to the news stories was that they gave images for it. So when we watched the weather portion of it, when they would say sunny or the word sunny in Spanish, they would show a picture of the sun or something very sunny. So I can't remember the words now, but I know when I hear a word associated with weather, it automatically clicks that it's weather related.
In other shows, for example, in the morning show, a lot of the time they just started talking and they started talking really fast, and there was really nothing to go off of, because they would switch topics very quickly. So in those cases, it was a little harder to try to figure out what it was that they were trying to say if I didn't understand one of the words. But otherwise, in the other shows, the newscast primarily, they showed me what it was that they were talking about. So finding out what they were talking about was easy.
What also happened was that my students had a hard time picking up the vocabulary because they were focused on just trying to understand the storyline and what was going on in general.
As a non-native speaker, my biggest issue was that if I saw something and I heard people speaking directly to me, I would have a lot harder time understanding what they were saying, and I felt that I would focus a lot more on the one word I wouldn't understand, and it would throw off my understanding of it. And because of this, I went into watching the videos with the concept of trying to understand them rather than picking up vocabulary from it. And this was really important for me, particularly in the narratives and the morning shows, from the narratives Vecinos and Despierto America, because they were interesting and they were really funny to watch, and it made it much easier to focus and follow along with because I could have a video or picture to watch in addition to the audio. So even if I didn't understand every word in the sentence, I could still understand what was going on. And I thought that was really useful to me because if I'm just listening to a recording or a lecture, I can zone out or just not understand it. But with watching a video, I can pause it, I can replay it as many times as I need to until I understand it. And that was, just a really good bonus for me. It was really useful.
So going back to my research question, I really think that my students did learn some new vocabulary. For some of them, it was better than for others. It's just their level of proficiency was or is a lot different. For the students that don't have as high a level of proficiency, sometimes some of the videos were just too much. It was too much input. It wasn't a level of input where it was comprehensible. It was a level of input where it went right over their heads. And for other students, the students where their level of proficiency was high, which a lot of my students, about 5 of them are fluent, just as fluent as I am. So when they listen to the videos or watch the videos, it's just normal. They're not learning anything new really because they know everything already. Or even if there might be a new vocabulary word, they don't need to know it because they know what's going on. Something I think that leaves me thinking that something that I just feel after doing all the research, it leaves me still with questions would be like, does this actually work? Is this actually going to work? Would this help someone? And I think it would. It just has to be continuous exposure, and they have to be watching this all the time. They have to be exposed to this, and that's good. And that's something that really needs to happen. So I know for my future teaching that I am going to try to use different videos, try to use different stuff to expose the kids to Spanish, which is also not just my Spanish, because they're used to hearing my Spanish, but not used to hearing different Spanish or different accents. But yeah, I think that using this and not just focusing on the book and on the vocabulary, then the students can really have something else, something more exciting to listen to and to watch. So I know I'm going to focus more on inserting some media in my lesson plans, and that way the kids don't just get all bored with what all the worksheets I give them.